Now I'm driving around strippers to go to calls.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm making, oh, you're going to give me $500 to drive you over here and just stand at the door and look at the guy hard?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm with it. You know what I mean? So now I'm getting deeper. I'm getting further and further away than the person that I am. Selling myself out. You know, I don't know anything about any of this stuff. That's all I'm doing is surviving, you know, just at a savage level. Because, you know, if you're hearing as the story goes along, there's nobody coming.
Right.
There's nobody behind me. Like, there's not like a backstop. There's no family. The family that I do have, I don't know. They live in Oklahoma. I went there once.
Sometimes I make mistakes in my life. Life goes on and on. Hey, I got wisdom from my papa. He ain't have a lot of money, but he taught me how to keep the perfect posture. So folding under pressure, that ain't something that I'm about to. Crabs in the barrel, I'm just trying to be a lobster. I hit my cousin, told him to call. It's been 12 years and I ain't heard from him at all. Had a little fallout over some money. Damn, ain't it funny how the smartest people be beefing like they some dummies? But I hope you doing swell now. Hope your family well now.
The Primary Purpose with Pej podcast is sponsored by Intervention on Call. Intervention on Call is your go-to resource for families suffering from addiction. Offering on-demand access to experienced interventionists, we provide private hourly sessions, guidance on next steps, and ongoing family support, helping you make informed decisions when timing and clarity matter most. For more information or to book an appointment, go to www.interventiononcall.com. Today on Primary Purpose with Pej, we sit down with Randy Underwood, an Orange County native whose life has been shaped by speed, freedom, and the raw edge of Southern California's surf and punk scenes. Randy grew up between San Diego and Los Angeles, immersed in a world of motorcycle racing, surfing, and skateboarding. He came of age with the independent, rebellious spirit of Generation X, a time defined by DIY culture, loud music, and a refusal to follow the traditional script. Old school punk rock wasn't just a soundtrack, it was a mindset that shaped how he moved through the world. From the outside, that lifestyle looked adventurous and untamed. But like many who lived fast and hard, the energy that fueled freedom also carried consequences. Over time, the same impulses that drove the thrill-seeking life began to take their toll, pushing Randy toward a turning point he couldn't ignore. The rebellious spirit that once chased speed and noise evolved into something steadier, more intentional. Years into recovery, those Generation X sensibilities remain, but they've been tempered by experience, responsibility, and a deeper understanding of what it means to truly live free. Today, Randy is a fortunate husband, a dog lover, and a man who carries the lessons of his past with humility. His story is about transformation, not losing who you are, but refining it into something stronger, quieter, and more grounded. This conversation is about identity, rebellion, sobriety, and the kind of growth that happens when the chaos finally gives way to clarity. Please welcome to the show, Randy Underwood. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's a good opportunity. Been knowing you for quite a long time.
For a long
now.
time.
And
I've known you my entire sobriety.
yeah. And it's been a wild ride, you know. It's been a wild. The whole life has been a wild ride. You know, we were talking earlier about my youth and the antics, and yeah. And you know, it's. I look back on it, and there's shame in some of it, and then there's some of it that are, you know, definitive, you know, learning curves for myself, right? So, you know, Orange County cliche, right? I'm, you know, born in Orange County,
Garden Grove.
In Garden Grove,
yeah,
right behind Magnolia High School is where I was born, and you know, the parents had come out in like about '56, I guess, and they moved to Compton originally. That's where my parents landed.
Well, Compton was predominantly white back then.
Well, not just that, but I believe there was a lot of jobs in automotive at the time, which is peculiar, and then defense.
Yep.
And my mom had worked previously in Oklahoma, where they were from, and at an air base out there. So she thought she would get a job there. My dad would, you know, get the job at Firestone or whatever was there at the time. Anyways, so they started wanting to have a family and everything, and my mom had about I guess 4 or 5 miscarriages before this came, and surprise, but in the interim, speaking about my early days, things that I can recall was, they had in the time when it had adopted a young man, and I guess from what I hear from people I even met later on in life about my brother, because he died at 9 years old, that he was something special. They said there was just something about him, very angelic and kind and just loved me.
Younger than you?
He was older than me.
Than
you. They had adopted him before
you.
All the parts came together and Randy popped out, right?
Yeah.
So so I had that brother, and these are just the little glimpses I remember of those days early on, living over there. And I remember, I guess I was kind of an odd kid. I used to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Even, I remember walking home from teeny weeny preschool, and I remember I came in and told my mom, the hippies are shooting up down the street. And she looked at me like, what do you know about hippies or shooting up? I don't know where I got this idea and all this stuff. And there was just this street. And on this street was just a bunch of, it was such a different world,
How was it?
It was, you were kind of on your own from day one in a certain sort of way. It's kind of how, if I was to, do a high overview of what it was like to grow up, that just beginning of Generation X or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really true that you kind of like, your parents were there, but you're gonna have to find your own fortitude. You know what I mean? And I
relate to that. That was me in Costa Mesa, probably about a decade later.
Sure, So I just remember that being a kind of there, like things like peculiar things. There was a guy at the end of the street named, everybody called him Dirty Ernie, and he had this like hopped up 56 Bel Air, and he would go down the street at like 70 miles an hour. And there's kids all over the place on trikes and everything like that. Well, one day he runs over my dog. I didn't think nothing of it. And at the time, I don't remember that I felt that much about it, which is peculiar because I'm a dog lover now, and I was a dog lover then, but it's like, oh, I guess I need a new dog. You know what I mean? So it's just, and I remember Dirty Ernie. Oh yeah. And he learned the name. I remember the high school kids would have, because like I said, I live right behind Magnolia High, and they would have parties on a weekend, and they would invite everybody in the neighborhood. Like, hey, we're going to have a party. Come on over. And so I remember going there, and it was like, some sort of, 1960s music playing of some sort. Yeah. And there was beer and weed, and I could smell what I knew later was weed. Yeah. And I remember thinking, well, they're got beers.
It's all good.
I should have one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I remember doing that, and I got my ass beat, well, not beat. My dad, swatted me on the ass and said, put that down, sent me home. Yeah. Sort of thing. But, that was just Orange County back then. There was a lot of orange trees. There was...
lots of orange trees.
Yeah, it was just a different place, and my parents, again, like they had migrated from Oklahoma. And at the time, there was a big migration, apparently, from Oklahoma to California. And they called it the Okie Mafia. So these people would, they kind of like any group, they kind of hung out together to some extent, or whatever the case may be. And they were just hard. Yeah. They were just hard, and so we were there, and I had that brother, like I said, that my parents had adopted. He came down with cancer, brain cancer. Wow. And so I remember a lot of time in the hospital, and him being in the hospital and me wandering the halls, trying to get attention and, free candy and stuff like that. And on one particular day, I don't know when it was, but I know that I was wandering down the halls, hustling the nurses for candy and all this stuff, because they'd always give me candy. And all of a sudden, this alarm just takes off, just boom, big, loud, crazy alarm. And I'm like, and I see all these people running down the corridor with a cart, and I'm like, so I'm making my way down there, and it's my brother's room, and I look in there, my mom's on the floor, and I'm like, wow, what happened? What happened? And they kind of are getting her up and all this stuff. And, my brother's still laying there in a coma. He'd been in a coma for about 2 months, I think, or something like that. And so, some time later, they got squared away. We got home, whatever. And eventually she told me, she goes, honey, Gary, that was his name. Gary sat up and looked at me. And I said, hi, honey, how you doing and all this stuff. And apparently he said to my mother, I'm walking through the flowers with Jesus. And he fell dead. Wow. And she heard that, and she just fainted and just hit the floor. And, to follow that up, as is very common when parents, for some reason, when they lose a child,
They're not
divorce,
the same.
the divorce comes
Oh,
pretty
yeah,
quick.
yeah. Other stuff comes
So,
in.
so there was about 2 years of, there was a change. I noticed a change, right? I remember one time my dad, it was my father's, it was Father's Day. So me and my brother said, oh, let's go out there and wash Dad's car before he wakes up. So we go out there and we wash the car, scrub-a-dub-dub, all this little kind of stuff. Go in and tell him, hey, Dad, get up. We got a surprise, all this stuff. And I remember we walked outside and my mom just threw her hand across my dad and said, Jerry, stopped him because all around the car was SOS pads, which are steel wool. So we scrubbed the whole car with steel wool, trying to do him a solid, right?
Really?
yeah, that kind of stuff, And I remember just and he's like, yeah, don't ever wash my car again or something. And like 3 days later, it came home a new color or whatever. But so there was some good. These are just little flashes of things that I remember from back then, right?
Yeah.
And then we moved down to Fallbrook, and they were together still for about another year. And Fallbrook was a whole nother place. It was very country at that time. It was like the Mendocino South.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the weed was getting grown.
Yeah.
So, and they used to have this thing that I learned about this just from being there and having friends that had older brothers and sisters, and they would tell us, they call it Johnny Appleseed. They would just throw marijuana seeds everywhere. And the big
wild.
Well, you'd be like sitting there at the bank in the planter, and once I get to know what it looks like, and I said, well, I'm going to have to try this at some point,
Yeah.
So I'm out there, and I remember, I hit a joint first when I was in probably 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah.
We went way out into the avocado groves because that was the avocado capital of the world at the time, and and did it. And I don't remember if I got high or not, to be honest with you, but it was a strange town. You had Tom Metzger there, from the KKK lived there. I remember he came into my mom's flower shop and she goes, "Your money is no good here. Get out of here," and all this stuff. And she meant it. She was like, my parents were just not that way, and it was out. The Hell's Angels used to come through real tough. And just kind of take over because it was a small little town.
Yeah.
And it was good times. That's when I started racing motorcycles and stuff. And we would go out, with my dad and my brother, and it was really cool. We had some good years there left, probably 3 or 4 of them, before they finally ultimately split up. And at that time, we moved over to Encinitas, my mother and my brother, and then my dad lived in Carlsbad, so not too far apart or whatever the case may be. But I was a completely different person after they split up. I was the terror. Just I know it now what it was. I didn't realize it then, obviously, But yeah, there was just something changed in me. It was, I felt there was just something lost,
Yeah.
and I think that's really true. I think divorce is, I understand why it happens. I understand. It was very flippant back then. You had the a culture shift as well, where it was not uncommon for people to flippantly get divorced. I can't know if it's third wave feminism or whatever. My mom was certainly not caught up in that situation. That's not what it was. My dad was a player.
Yeah.
My dad was out doing his thing, you know what I mean? And, as we go further in the story, I can tell you about how I, developed resentment around that and all this whole kind of thing because,
Sure.
It felt like we were living hand to mouth all the time. And so I started working when I was 11 years old, washing dishes in a restaurant and stuff because nobody told me we didn't have money, but I knew we didn't have much. I knew we had enough to eat and had a place to live. And, I'm living in Encinitas. How bad can it really be? You know what I mean? Back then, it was a completely different town as well. It was, very like old school, beach, California. You know what I mean? It was not heavily populated, and everybody knew everybody else and stuff. But yeah, it was an interesting time and a shift. But I adapted really well. I seemed to adapt to things, to change at those times without as much trouble as I had later in life. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Changing, making new friends and things like that. It used to be pretty easy, You know, later in life, it was like when I started, you know, my walls started coming in, and you know what I mean? I started being, you know, I had trepidation about people and trust issues like crazy, maybe originating from my dad. I don't know. I remember when I was in one of my recovery meetings some years later, I was in there thinking about my dad. I was saying, you know, my dad, you know, he left my mom and I to go chase women and all that, blah, 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 and I'm, you know, swearing and all this stuff about it and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I sat down and I thought, oh my God, that's me. Like I was following his pattern perfectly, you know. Bingo, but
Apple
whatever.
doesn't fall far from the tree.
Not a problem, you know, not an issue. I didn't see it, you know, and that's kind of historically true where, you know, you hate what you are, you know.
Yeah.
you point the finger at them and all of a sudden you're like, oops, yeah, problems in the mirror. But yeah, so growing up down there, you know, all of a sudden, like I think it was 1977 or 78, late night one night, and I'm watching a show called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert, and I saw the Ramones, and I was just completely captivated. I was like, oh my God, that's the soundtrack in my soul. I mean, I just the tempo change, the no fucks given, if you will, you know, just we're gonna do us, and it's completely, you know, opposite of what's going on at the time. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, I'm all about this, and now I want to go buy the album, right? And the album was not in conventional mainstream stores. You had to go to L.A. to, you know, Vinyl Solution or, you know, Zed Records and things like that. So I took the train. I was, you know, 12, you know, 13. Took the train up to L.A., got off at, you know, the station downtown, walked into, you know, Hollywood, which is a good trek.
It's a walk.
Yeah, it's a walk, you know. Went in there, got my record and all this stuff, and then I started meeting a friend of mine named Jesse Stevens. I'll forget. He's like, yeah, you got to get with the whole scene and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, what? I don't know. And he's like, you got to get a haircut first. We're anti-hippie and all this stuff, right? So I'm like, okay. I think it was summer 78 or 79, 80 right there. You know, I get my haircut. Now I meet some other friends and we're going to shows. And it was just magnificent at those early years. It was just, you know, everybody was tight. You saw somebody with a funny haircut, they were your friend right then and there.
Yeah.
Where are we drinking? Who's your girlfriend? I want your girlfriend. You got my girlfriend. I mean, we just had a lot of sex. You know, you know, a lot of just
swinger parties on.
Oh man, it was just off the chain. You know what I mean? And it was a fit for me. You know, in my ignorance, I thought, well, this is how I'm going to live. Yeah, this is me. It's all me forever. You know what I mean? I didn't, you know, and. By that time, you know, my friends started doing construction and stuff, and they're like paying. I think minimum wage was $2.35 an hour, and they're paying $6 an hour. I'm like, oh, we're all about that. So I started, you know, learning construction trade, right? Yeah. You know, and all this little kind of stuff. And this is still all down in Encinitas and whatever. And you know, a couple of big events happened. They were big to me. They might not have been big to other things, but. There was a guy, he was a frenemy of mine. His name was Danny, and we were frenemies. I mean, sometimes we got along great, and you know, and did things together that were, you know, we stole cars and picked up girls in other towns. And we stole cars a lot back in those days because it was easy to steal. It was easy. So, you know, my favorite car is yours. You know what I mean? So, so we would cruise around and do that. But I don't know the whole story. I've heard several versions of it. One of them says he jumped in front of the train. The other one says he tried to clear it, but the train. So going through Leucadia, the train back in the day would go through there at like 70 miles an hour. And they were allegedly all taking a walk right down there, and boom, he got smacked. And what happened after that was, and you can even look it up on the Reader, the San Diego Reader, if you look up Danny Dean. I think the story's still there. We basically had been I didn't rent the house. Another guy named Dennis, who was his older brother, tore the house to the ground. I mean, we leveled. I didn't do much of the leveling. I was there like day 2 when it happened. But I was there the last 2 or 3 days where people were there. And I just remember as people faded away, you know, something changed in me where it was like, this can't be forever. And I don't know what to do because, you know, I'm like in 11th grade or something like that. And people have plans for after school. I don't have any. I got a girlfriend. I got a girlfriend. I got a rich girlfriend who, for whatever reason, tolerated as much as she did. She was, I'll just leave it out. But it was my first love, and she was everything to me. And that was the only thing I had good in my life. And then she's, I catch her with other dude and all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm just, my life is falling apart really quick. Everything I thought that I might be able to count on is disappearing. My friendship group's gone. I'm now already starting with lower companionship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm
yeah.
already starting to get there. And, so we're talking, we'll assign some years to it. I'm going to say 85 or 6, my scene is completely dead. The punk rock scene's, for me, it really died in like 83, because that's when all of a sudden it was safe for kids to come. And it was like, every knob in the world wanted to go to a punk show, and all this stuff. And it just, and so I was like, okay, who am I and what do I do? I don't know. I know I can build things. I'm learning a trade and I'm getting pretty good at it. I can sustain myself, but I couldn't because the drinking.
Yeah.
So I was a cliche, construction guy back then. Everything I didn't ever want to be. You know what I mean? I would work all week and party all weekend and probably have enough for gas and a couple of burritos until next Friday. You know what I mean? It was just hand to mouth, but, and then find a girlfriend. Oh, new girlfriend. Okay, where does she live? Because that's where I live. You know what I mean? Because we're gonna make and really this is a bit embarrassing to really say that like every relationship I've probably gotten into, I was looking forward to it being the last one.
Yeah.
I had some sort of model in my head that
this is gonna be perfect.
This is if when I get to this certain place and station in life with this certain person and these things that I think I know I need, then the anxiety will go away and everything like that. But, drinking and drugging, it just keeps that going, And so then again, at the time, think about it. Who's hooking up with me in those years?
What type of people are they?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're me. And that means they're not doing well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That means that they have issues.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because water finds its own level.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm giving it hell. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to avoid jail. Another thing that happened in Encinitas back in those days was it became a kind of a pretty substantial meth area, because in this
I remember
one area,
Hammett,
there was like 3 stores in this little strip mall, and you could buy all 3 things you need to cook meth. Well, a bunch of guys would come in from all other states, like the South and everything like that. And
that became like the meth capital down there at first.
It did. And so
before it went
So what we would
nationwide.
do is send girls to get tight with these guys. Once they cooked up a batch and made a bunch of money, we'd go in there and just, let's say we took their money. Let's just put it that way. We'll leave the methodology out of it, but we would leave with that. And I knew, because I had friends going to prison already. You know what I mean? And I knew, I was like, yeah, if I stay on this trajectory, it's all bad. And I'd been to jail couple times, 3, 4, 5 days. I got into it. I beat a guy up one time and did like 2 weeks or whatever. And I was like, this is not a fit for me.
Yeah.
But, I learned. That was the last time I ever went to jail after that. I never went, except for going into Mexico, but we'll get into that later. But, so I'm just doing the 50-yard dash in a 40-yard room. It was my entire life. But who's this girl? Oh my God, where do you live? Oh, that's where I live. My friends would be like, where are you? And I'd be like, man, I'm in Santa Monica now. Really? No, what? And I'm like, I met this girl. Whoa, yeah, I'm in. This is going to be cool. Play house for a year or two, and the whole thing would just come to rubble. It just never worked out. And and my drinking was really. This kind of hindered me in my recovery, to be honest with you. So my drinking and using was, I just stayed consistently loaded. It didn't mean I went and I would go to work almost every day. There were days here and there I didn't or whatever, but my days started with like a bong load. You know what I mean? And I would go to work, but I just couldn't function without being under the influence of something. So then, being in construction in those days, drinking at lunch was like normal. Like everybody did it. It was just normal. 2 beers, 2 tall cans, whatever. And now I'm working, and more elevated areas doing, commercial work, up high and stuff. And I'm really good up high, especially after a couple of beers. I'm just walking down the steel like it's nothing and all this stuff. And so I'm figuring, well, this is just who I am, and this is what I do. And, hanging out with my friends that I, are still around. Everybody kind of, the few that I stayed in touch with. And, we were just savages. I mean, just savage. I mean, God, I remember there was a bar in Claremont called the Pink Panther. And it was great because there was an old bunch of the old punk rock people. And things had changed. Now we're talking about 88 or 89.
Yeah.
And, we'd go to concerts together, and we had a lot of fun at that place. And, the owner was an old school guy and everything like that. And we had a lot of fun there. But, I remember, being there and hooking up with all these different girls and stuff. And every single one of them, in my naivety, I didn't realize what they were doing for a living. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden I did. Yeah. So now I'm driving around strippers to go to calls.
Yeah.
And I'm making, you're going to give me $500 to drive you over here and just stand at the door and look at the guy hard?
Yeah.
I'm with it. You know what I mean? So now I'm getting deeper. I'm getting further and further away than the person that I am. I mean, that I don't even know this person. I know that being raised the way I did, basically in a Christian church environment, but not heavy duty, but just do unto unders, things like this, stuff like that. There was something in me that told me wrong, and I would just, but wrong, but 500, wrong, but $1,000, wrong, but 50 grand, you know what I mean? This sort of thing. And so I was selling myself out. I don't know anything about any of this stuff. That's all I'm doing is surviving, just at a savage level. Because, if you're hearing as the story goes along, there's nobody coming.
Right.
There's nobody behind me. Like, there's not like a backstop. There's no family. The family that I do have, I don't know. They live in Oklahoma. I went there once, and, it's not my jam.
No.
It's just not. It's like really flat, kind of place where you can watch your dog run away for 2 weeks. It's still going. I mean, it's just not a fit for me. And, but I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just know that I know how to survive. I know how to survive and stay out of prison. You know what I mean? So, I'm at the will of my emotions. I have no idea. And, basically, when it all came to a head was 1994, February 22nd of 94. And I have an opportunity to make a large sum of money. At this time, also, so about let me go back just a little bit. I had been listening to skinhead music and enthralled in the music before the racist skinhead stuff came out.
Yeah.
You're talking about the
original culture.
The original stuff, it was Madness, it was the Specials, it was the ska, then it was the oi, what they call.
Yeah.
And that's basically rock, you know what I mean? And I really liked that a lot. I still do to this day.
Yeah.
And then the skinhead, racist scene started coming in.
Yeah.
And I could resonate because they would say things like, these guys are taking our jobs and blah, 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 blah. Well, in my being in construction, that was a fact. that was a fact, and it's unfortunately the exploitation of both sides of the spectrum. And I don't want to go get political because both of them are, I don't know if I should say that's what they're shit. You know what I mean?
It's okay. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, they're both shit. And bottom line was at that time, the unions were getting busted. They were just busting these guys past us, exploiting them. Because they thinking they're making a lot of money, but we don't have any wages, and wages, all this stuff was kind of true, but I could tell I didn't like them. The skinheads, the racist skinheads. Yeah. I was like, I can never hate somebody like you guys do, because my very first friend in life was named Hector.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A Mexican guy.
That's just the bottom line. You know, it's just not gonna. It's just not. I could hang with them. I could resonate with them on certain things when they weren't all super political. They were kind of just, somewhere about the music, somewhere about, but I just was like, eh. And then over here on this other side, you had these like other sort of, I don't know what they were, that they had been traditionals and now they're like skinheads against the fascist sort of thing. And they're super extra, and that they're more like communists, and these guys are the fascists, or they're I don't know. I don't want anything to do with any of it.
The breed didn't seem to have lasted. You don't see it like that anymore.
No,
was this like late '80s?
This was So I think the '88 is when the racist thing really became popular. It was Geraldo and all that kind of stuff and everything like that. I just was like, God, I don't want to be in that. I don't want to be in the music scene at all anymore because, like running around in the '80s in Hollywood, going to the whiskey and going to all these different places. It was cool, Then what happened was about 1980. You had all these guys coming in from other states going to GIT, which is Guitar Institute of Technology, and learning the hairband riffs, And so now my scene is gone, and here's all these knobs from other towns. Everybody who's not from California, when they move here, they try. Not all of them. But this is
I understand
that they want to be California,
and they're not,
and they can never be. Just like if I moved to Iowa and learned to grow corn, I don't know the dirt.
Yes,
I know the dirt in California. I'm hard in the paint in California.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not making that bet.
You're just
judgment call.
Yeah, you're just
it's
not
just
from
this
there.
is who I am.
Yeah, you're from here.
Yeah, I'm from here, and so you got all these guys, and and we're fighting these dudes and lighting their hair on fire with all that Aquanet in it, and just being dicks.
Yeah.
But I'm going back to say that the music scene then just started changing, and I couldn't roll with it. You know what I mean? Because again, these guys aren't from here.
Yeah.
And I'm good friends with some rock stars. I think one of them.
Yeah.
And he's not from here either. He's from Seattle.
Right.
But he's not the kind of guy that comes in here and tries to be California. He stays. He's him.
Yeah.
Whatever. And I won't mention because it's not my place too. But so so my scene's gone here. Then I see these skinhead scene, and I'm like, this is not productive.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on, but I got this opportunity to, by this time I'm heavily into firearms and everything, and I have this chance at this to move some guns, not illegally, but upon appearance it looks really nasty. It's a good photo op, So there it is. I got this load, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to take him to this place, and with these guys, And it goes bad. We get pulled over.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're driving through. I think it's the top of Utah, going in towards Wyoming area, and we get and now it starts snowing, and we're in a car that we had chopped the roof off of because it was for Southern California, but now it's snowing.
No, it's not.
And so now we put ski masks on, right?
Oh boy!
So we're going down the road with whatever the one stoplight town, cops there on us and all this stuff, and we got a bunch of AKs in the car and stuff, and he's like, "What's all this?" and blah 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 blah. And they, but what happened is I'm laying on the highway, looking off into the dusk. It's just getting dusk, and I'm like, for some reason, I don't know why, but through the bottom of my feet, all the way through my body, all I could hear myself say was, I didn't say it, my mind said it, I'll never drink or use drugs ever again under any circumstances. It's completely non-negotiable. Kill me or keep me sober. And I had never even thought about being sober before that. Never. I had a girlfriend in AA one time her name was Heather at the time. I don't know if we were a girlfriend, dating, whatever. But I would go sit in meetings at the Sixth Step House while she was in there and drinking beers in the car, right? So I'm like, well, I don't know where that came from. Anyways, that folded up, no charges, nothing. But the girl that I was with at the time told me, if you go do this, I won't be here when you get back. And I'm like, what's the big deal? I'm coming back with like 30 grand, 30 racks. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I came back and like the place was vacuumed. You know those lines?
Yeah.
It was perfect. And I'm like, wow, you know? And I'm like, oh my God. So now I don't drink anymore. And who am I and what do I do? I have no idea. All I know is just terror. I was just consumed with anxiety, like unbelievable. I didn't sleep for like 30 days. And everybody says, oh, you couldn't have been. I'm telling you.
No sleep.
And finally, I'm like, I know I need a job. That's what I need. And I get a job on, calling people and all this stuff to build the House of Blues up in Hollywood.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Right. So I land this gig and my buddy's living in Costa Mesa at the time. And I'm like, all right. So I go out there and I'm building the House of Blues and I'm just tripping. The sensory overload, because everything had been dulled. Marijuana is, people think, oh, it's just weed. I can promise you that stuff can do a number on you, man.
For sure.
Yeah. The beers that I drink consistently, say 5 or 6 a day, maybe in a weekend, 50, whatever.
Yeah.
But that weed, man, I'm telling you, right, that stuff is dangerous.
Yeah,
man.
I know.
And you don't realize it until you try to quit it. And I mean, and then plus my emotional development still is back at 17 years old.
Exactly.
So I'm living life through the
we get
lens.
stunted from when we started.
100%.
Yeah.
Nothing will stunt that growth more than marijuana consistently.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I'm biologically, I was 30 years old when I got sober.
Yeah.
And there I am, basically,
Still like a 17-year-old.
17 years
process.
old. No idea, and I'm not attending any, programs or anything like that. I'm doing it just bare ass.
Dry.
Just dry. And I
Sobriety, as you say.
Yeah, that's right. And I want my shit now.
Yeah.
I want it. I need that, and that. And once I get that, I'm golden. So I'm getting off the freeway one night, coming back from the House of Blues, go to Costa Mesa. There's a cute girl in the car next to me. I look over at her, say, hey, what are you doing right now? And she goes, going home. I said, let's go get something to eat real quick. And she goes, okay. So we pull in there. And now we're going to order food. And now I got to order something to drink. But I got to let her know I don't drink alcohol. Right? so I order iced tea. I look at her, I go, I don't drink. And she goes, neither do I. I'm 3 years sober. And I'm like, well, Jesus has just shot a lightning bolt through the middle of this table, and you and I are getting married. And so I had her married up about 5 months later.
Oh my
God. Yeah. Had to have it. I have a list, partner, and when I check the box, I'm going to feel better.
Yeah.
So I'm with her, got her.
Yeah.
Now the job is done in the House of Blues, and so now I'm living in North Laguna. There had been 500 custom homes just burnt down 2 years before
remember that fire.
And I'm like, jackpot, because Randy builds custom homes.
Yeah.
So that started happening. Well, right next door to me is this guy named Joe Quinn, a guy who was probably...
I know who Joe Quinn is.
He was 50 years sober at the time, or whatever the case may be.
He wrote that book?
No, I don't think, no.
A different Joe Quinn?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah, this guy was an old timer.
Yeah.
You name it. Clancy used to live in his car. Let's put it that way.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
correct.
how old?
That's correct. Yeah. So he's right next door to me, and I see this old guy with the AA sticker on his bumper sticker. And I'm like, and every Thursday he walking out with a box of Cremora and sweetener, and I'm like, this poor son of a bitch, still going to them meetings. I'd been to like one meeting, and I'm like, poor guy. And I would say, so tell me, why are you still going to those meetings if you got all these years? And he just looked at me like, see you later. And just deuces. He's gone. Right?
I got nothing for you.
I don't get it. Now, the funny part is that girl that I'd married told me this. If you work the 12 steps, you will leave me. She told me that within the first 4 months of knowing her.
God.
I said, why would I leave you? Why would I work the 12 steps? I've already got like 120 days sober, or maybe at the time 5 months. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a wrap, right? So get about a year into that relationship, and the shine's coming off. You know what I mean? It's like, I can do better. I'm driving by this place out there on the Canyon Road, and I'm like seeing some other options. Yeah, maybe I should go in there and check it out. Go into the place. In there, some guy says something out of pocket. I just beat the shit out of his ass right in front of that old club there. And they banned me for life and all this stuff. Don't ever come back here and all this stuff. I'm like, a bunch of, pussies, da-da-da-da-da, all this stuff and all this stuff. So I'm like, I told her, I said, yeah, I went to check that out. And it's not for me. It's people. People are soft as cotton in there. I'm not having none of that, Trying to turn me into a pacifist ain't happening. So some time goes by and the new establishment opens up. And I figure I'll slither through there, you know what I mean? So I showed up, and those guys, some of them were like, they thought what I did was the right call at that time. Anyways, I'm like there, and then I'm walking down to get me a cup of coffee down this one aisle, and this girl looks up at me like that. I said, you ain't ready for this. She goes, oh, it's on, like that, bang. So now I got, I got to get rid of the wife because this is going to be better. And we know who she is. I think, who she is. Yeah. And, we were just together, two hammers looking for a nail. I mean, she's a Swede, she's high speed, low drag, just like me. We're just, just was off the chain. Would drag her to meetings in a negligee. Get up, we're going. I don't want to go. Get up, we're going. Just wild, and then,
love it.
Oh, it was off the fucking chain, and then it was like, this other girl over here, she's in the same industry I'm in, you know what I mean? So I just burnt through relationships for, my dick's been my compass my whole fucking life, you know what I mean? I don't know what to do, you know what I mean? It's just like, and this old player taught me back in the day, he goes, you fan the flames with the air of indifference. And I'm like, oh, so you just act like you don't like him? He goes, yeah. Like that, and sure enough, it worked. You know what I mean? I was like, at that age, you know what I mean?
How old were you?
Oh God, we're talking. I was about 32, 33. Yeah. But biologically, I'm still now. I'm approaching 21.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was just a complete retard. I'd start now. I'm listening to people who've done the 12 steps. I'm listening to them.
Yes.
And I'm like a little, but they got to talk about these things where you kind of tell another person, all your dirt.
Yeah.
And 3 could keep a secret if 2 are dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need nobody testifying. You know what I mean? I'm not with it. You know what I mean? It's inherent that way.
Yeah.
I was
it's just
raised
ingrained in the way that you are.
I was raised, you know what I mean? You never refriend a snake because a snake only gets big, sheds its skin to get bigger. You know what I mean? No way. Ain't happening. And so, I finally was in there one morning. I made friends with some people in my community there, 2 lesbians, and we talked about women and looked at women, and we remodeled houses together. You know what I mean? So it was like I'm still one of my best friends, Tracy, and she loves me regardless, and I love her regardless. Doesn't matter. Different communities, different whatever, but not. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And and so. Eventually that was just like, I'm going through, years of, relationships, just, always trying to find just the right one. Come on, help me out. Okay, now I finally do the 12 steps. I got this sponsor, Chuck Strong. And this guy was just, he knew me better than I ever knew myself.
Wow.
And I would say that to him. I'd be like, how do you know that? He goes, I'm you. We're all the same. We're just a little bit different. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that helped me, And then I remember finally, like the final straw when I finally was fully, surrendered. And not in a way that, you use that word. That word has a lot of, interpretations, And for me, it meant like, you won. I'm going to be some, dickless turd, pacifist guy, just a sad sap. It's just not. I can't. And but I'm in this meeting this one morning, and this gay cowboy, this one of them bitch. I mean, he was audacious. He was outspoken. He was as crazy as me, and he said something in that meeting that I could never remember, but I know the whole place was on the floor laughing, and I had a complete psychic break. So I've had two now. I've had the day I got clean, and sober,
Yeah.
and then I had this, and I left that meeting that morning saying nothing matters. There's nothing to be afraid of. Give up, drop the rock. I just let it all go. I didn't care what happened next. I was unafraid. I had no fear in me. I've not had it like I used to when I first got sober, which takes some time and it takes some work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I always tell people, you're a newcomer, you got 5 years, and they're like, and I'm like, I'm only telling you that because you have to go through some things, and win some take some losses and some wins, and understand how to dealing with that, and which will happen to you in 5 years. Trust me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, I just remember I went to work that day, and I'm with this building inspector. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, what's going on with you today and all this stuff? I said, it doesn't matter. You can come back and inspect it tomorrow. I'm really not in the mood for you right now. Like, I don't even want to talk to you. And I was never the same person again, And I think from there, I've walked a higher road, for myself, and found out why we do the things that we do. I remember doing panels in Casa del Cerro, Stanton Detox, the Rock Center, places that, I go there. I know these guys only want a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah. They don't want to hear your message.
They don't want to hear my message at all. You know what I mean? They're fresh out, whatever the case may be. But they're there and they have to listen.
Yes.
So they can go get their,
You
next
never know what
cigarette.
kind of seed you'll plant.
And and I've seen it didn't matter what the result was. You do it because that's what we're told to do. And I had great, interpreters, if you will, of the big book, and everybody had a handle back then. There was, Billy Pencils, he sold, and he sold, what do you call it, for the stores or whatever, there was just all these characters, and, fighting was not uncommon. You know what I mean? I remember that these women used to hate me so much because I was such a dick that as soon as I'd start to share, they'd all stand up and walk out. And one of them's name was Kiki. And Kiki was like she was something. She was a force.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And in her dying days, she said to me, honey, I owe you a big amends. And I'm like, really? Like that? We were kind of okay at the time,
Yeah.
She goes, I had an affair with my first 8 years of my sobriety. And I'm like, son of a bitch, and you're kicking me in the teeth all these years? And I'm at least trying to find somebody to marry and, do something with, every time I was. And, I just fall for these, cliches. I had I've been married now, my third marriage, but the second one was just, I just lived out things that I wanted to do with, and, woke up in places with strange shit. And, I will tell you right now that sobriety will afford you the opportunities to find out what is a fit for you and what is not. You know what I mean? And I thought, three-way or no way. You know what I mean? With the wife and all this whole kind of stuff, and, go down that road. You know what I mean? And nowadays it's like, OnlyFans and all these people. It's like, oh my God, that's going to be with you forever. Please be careful. And I watch guys still to this day, hooking up like, oh man, this is gonna hurt. I'll be there for you, dog.
We see where it's going.
I got a friend right now, just thought I'd do a solid and help a girl out, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man.
Oh, we see it all the time.
Oh, bro, it's just painful. But finally after another broken relationship, I literally got on my knees and said, would you please give me my ride or die? I am so over me and my picker. This picker is busted. You know what I mean? And this was after the Texas redhead. God bless her. I hope she's doing well. I don't know. And sure enough, there I meet my wife now that everybody knows, and people were threatening my life if I hurt her. They're like,
Yeah, because she's a gem.
if you do anything to hurt Laura, and I said I would never do anything. And I mean, my wife has a sewing machine, which just I'm with a woman with a sewing machine, not bondage gear, not, wigs, makeup, and,
simple
cameras,
Simple lady.
She has a sewing machine. I just trip out on it. She's like so naturally good. Like her and her sisters like mail each other things in Amazon. They send cards. They see their grandma. They do all these things I don't know anything about. But I just love her. Like
she's the best.
You know what I mean? It's just the dumbest thing in the world. I'm like, and then
who would have thought out of all?
Well,
those
that's
women?
the thing. It's like, okay, well, now what? Now who's Laura really? Because now if she's with that dude, what really solidified is when I had my motorcycle accident, which you were,
Yes.
were very attentive to, which I appreciate. She showed me what ride or die looks like. So right. Listen, I'm a real one, man. If you're my people. You and some other people, all they got to do is pick up that phone.
That's right.
I'll drive in from Scottsdale. I will be there frontlining with you.
Yeah,
Flat out. That's how it goes.
That's how you've always been.
I'm not going out like a chump. It ain't happening. It's just not, I can't. You know what I mean? And even when I coming back into, I was coming back here, and I'm like, I don't know, man. There's like that mass hysteria psychosis still over California, and the trans thing. Let's just use that for a second. I ran around Hollywood in the 80s. Trans were 10 a penny.
Yeah, there was
they were everywhere. It's nothing new.
Yeah.
I got news for
They
you.
just
but
didn't call them non-binary.
Well, now they're serious about it.
Yeah.
At least back then they knew, hey, we're a shit show. We knew we were a shit show.
Yeah.
Who's got the blow? Let's
Yeah,
party.
let's just party.
Let's go, you know what I mean?
We
Like,
don't care what you are.
get over it. Do you? Like that, I'm a punk rocker. I got, a mohawk, in 19, say 80. That was putting your life at risk.
Yeah.
There was people that would kill you for that.
Yeah.
And people don't know that. You know what I mean? So like coming back here, I was like, man, and all this whole kind of trepidation and all this stuff. And my buddy tells me, yeah, we're in this building right here. And I'm like, he goes, and we're working right across the street. And I pull up, and it's a recovery place. And I'm like, okay.
What is God trying to tell you?
Yeah. So here I am, and now I interface with newcomers all day.
It's so
And
cool.
Not just newcomers, fresh, and they're everywhere, And so I needed that because in Arizona to be, I appreciate Arizona. I tried in my industry, it's different there. It wasn't like to my liking, to be honest with you. It's like going from the Jetsons to the Flintstones.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's like, okay, we're going to do that. We did that in 1986, but okay, we'll do it. And anyways, but I appreciate the maverick state that it is. Those people are very tough and hard. They really are. They really, to live in those summers there that are 5 months long. It's not 3 months. It's 5 months.
It's nuts.
It's just Punisher, especially if you're a construction guy and you have to walk around outside, or God forbid, the guys that are the tradesmen that actually have to swing a hammer.
Jeez.
I don't know what to say, but I'm glad to be back here, and I'm glad to be back in the community. I came back because of you. I came back from the people in recovery in Southern California. There's no other place
Well, it wasn't
like
the same without you. I always thought that.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I came back a lot often during, the pandemic.
We saw you come here and there, but now that you're back as a regular, that's...
I had finished a job, right, as that I'd had, like I told you earlier, I had COVID in 2019. I thought I was walking pneumonia.
Yeah.
Whatever. I'd got the protocol for walking pneumonia. It was gone a couple of weeks later. I was fine. I don't begrudge anybody the way they attended to that.
Yeah.
That episode. Your leadership was, shit, and just gonna say, and lied to you, but I don't begrudge anybody, And what I liked about Arizona was like, hey, do you, man? You want to wear a mask? Wear a mask. You want to get a jab? Get a jab. And I said, well, no need for me to do that. I've already had it, and all this stuff. So I didn't care what people did. You know what I mean? But don't tread on me. You know what I mean? Don't tread on me. And but the ones that went super extra, I still see them to this day, and it's like that's a really sad thing to see. You know what I mean? To me it is. It's like I see people that are still tiptoeing around with the what they call the chin diaper or whatever and stuff, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. God bless you. You know what I mean? Like I hear you. You were terrified, and I get it, and I understand why. Because we count on people to tell us the truth and things like that. And so I'm back. My very dear friend Otis says, you don't get just to leave, Randy. He goes, we gave you everything that you have and made you the person you are. You need to be back here. You owe us. And I was like, that's coming from Otis.
And then I'm coming back.
Allegedly, I'm his sponsor, even though he's got like 17 years more than me.
Yeah.
Whatever. He calls me up and says, hey, I need somebody to talk to every day. You're going to be my sponsor. I'm like, there's no way to say no to that. You know what I mean? We talk every morning, and I'm back in the groove with you and back in the groove with the community. And you know what? It is what it is. I got to get over myself. My ego is not my amigo.
That's right. I got a few questions for you, and then I want to actually talk about something that really stands out with you. And I've told you this before. But what was the exact moment you realized your lifestyle was no longer sustainable? I think you said it.
Yeah, it was just, another hustle, gone wrong. This one just gone wrong. And, that's the day I got sober.
That was that day.
Yeah.
And then how did the punk rock and skate culture influence your relationship with drugs and alcohol?
Interesting. So I started skateboarding in 1975 at the old Del Mar. Or no, it was Del Mar. That's way later. It was like 1975, and it was at Carlsbad, is where it was. And then there was the Carlsbad 2, and then there was the Del Mar Skate Ranch. And in the Del Mar Skate Ranch, that spawned, I remember going back there a few years after I quit skating and watching this kid fly over my head. It was Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
So everybody that was somebody knows the skate ranch. And but in that whole thing, we always smoked pot. Now I started smoking pot on the regular in 6th grade for sure. Yeah. And how, the punk rock part of that came after guys like Dwayne Peters showed up and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was sex and drugs and rock and roll, whatever you want to call that on one hand. On the other hand, it was just just anarchy. Just fucking do whatever you wanted to do.
Right. What do people misunderstand most about getting sober later in life?
Was I later in life? Was 30 late?
I got sober at 36.
Yeah, I don't. Well,
we see them come in a lot younger these days.
Do they stay though? I mean,
not a lot of them.
Yeah, I think it's better to. Well, I don't know. I don't know about assigning an age or a something like that to it. What I would say is that don't kill yourself.
Exactly. I think these days things are different
because you're killing a stranger.
Yeah.
You don't know you, and don't
And these days it's easier for them to kill themselves, especially with the fentanyl.
Sure.
And all that.
I mean, no, it for sure. I mean, you could always kill yourself. I mean, but it's those. But the bottom line is that you're killing a stranger, and I will promise you this: ever since the day I got sober. This is the God's honest truth. I've had everything I've needed. Everything that I've needed. A place to live, a roof over my head, car to drive. You don't need a relationship. But I had plenty of those. And that was enough for me. I found out that the cops were not going to pull me over.
Yeah.
That was nice. I got tax refunds. That was nice. Just these small little things. You have no idea the impact of just getting rid of the anxiety of the life you're living when you're trying to duck and hide and all this stuff. My generation was high on individualism. So do you. You know what I mean? Do you?
It's really interesting. There's a couple things I wanted to touch on. You talked about the skinhead culture, and there was the racist ones. And I grew up in Utah from 5 to 15. So when I moved to California, I too was doing the whole Southern California living style, getting the boogie board on the back of the bike and riding down to the beach. But I remember going to school. I went to one high school, Costa Mesa High, and then I went to Woodbridge. And I remember I was doing drugs with some of those types of skinheads.
Uh-huh.
We're at a party. We're all smoking weed and doing some coke and things like that. Remember a black guy walking in, and they're under their breath. They're like, he's fucking right. And I'm looking at my skin color.
Why,
and thinking,
why were they saying it underneath their breath to begin with?
Exactly.
They weren't real
But not
ones.
just that. It tripped me out because I thought to myself, well, I'm dark.
Yeah.
And I'm accepted by it. Maybe because we're all getting high together already. But I used to think way back then it's like a learned behavior, like a collective ego.
To be sure. And then yeah, I mean, 90% of them are frauds. I mean, like literally 90% of them are not really what they profess. If you're shooting dope, then guess who else is?
Yeah.
You know, the Mexicans are, the black guys are,
Yeah.
everybody is. So are you trying to tell me you're at an elevated position?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So now I have friends that we call them needle Nazis. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And most of the people we know today that are skinheads are prison skinhead types.
Yeah.
That they've done time. You know, God bless them. You know what I mean? I mean, that's great. But man, what a thing to have to recover from, especially if they've done the prison time.
Yeah.
Like our friend Danny.
Yeah.
I mean, what a savage that guy is.
For sure.
I mean, what an outright savage. I mean, he is a gift.
Total gift.
He is a gift. You know what I mean? It's flat out. And I know other guys
Changed man.
I go to meetings with. I want to help them.
Yeah.
I don't have the story to tell them. But however, I will tell you this, that a lot of them are open-minded now because things are changing in that. That's been changing for quite a long time because most of the big shot caller guys and all that stuff are no longer.
They're not there anymore. Or they're gone forever. Or they're dead.
Well, they're dead, or they are, you know, they took plea deals and things like.
Sure.
Things fell apart. Let's put the system's completely
Some of them
changed.
didn't really go by.
I'm there for any one of them.
Yeah,
I'm there
that's
for
good.
any one of them.
Yeah.
I'm a white boy. You know what I mean? The way we're characterized now, like the white privilege. Are you kidding me? I'll stomp your face out if you fucking say some stupid shit like that to me. I've earned every penny I've ever worked. I was never much of a criminal. I didn't break into people's houses. I went without. I went without eating.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't have a bologna sandwich that day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so this whole idea that there's a privilege, I mean, you know, it's just absurd. You know what I mean? And I've worked my entire life.
Yeah.
And I still do to this day with, you know, people without papers from Latin America. Let's put it that way. You'll hope, you know, I speak enough Spanish to either get my ass kicked or get something done. We get along really well because I'm from them. I've spent more time in my life with Latino people than I have with white people because I'm at work every day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so we're just fine. You take your virtue signal and stick it. You know what I mean? Because you don't have nothing to do with the working class at all. We're the working class. You're not.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Which brings me to this. I know that I've known you my whole sobriety, and I got sober in Orange County. I went in Laguna, right, and that's where I first caught wind of you. And I used to sit in the room as a newcomer. Probably within the first 90 days, there's a lot of noise because I'd been in the 12-step world before,
right?
Unwillingly or because of the court card or whatever. But I remember the two people that stood out to me the most, because I wasn't hearing a lot, was a black lady, which we know very well. She's a good friend of ours.
Yep.
And you.
Yeah.
And you would talk about being a punk rock, former skinhead, this and that. And both of you guys, it was you two that I thought, these are polar opposite people. And at the end of the meeting, they hug each other and they get along.
Yeah.
And they've got long-term, for me it was long-term recovery because I certainly didn't have no double-digit recovery. I didn't have
I'll tell you how that worked. So what it was, can we say her name? I wonder.
Say it. She's been on here.
Okay. Oh yeah. So AJ, so she was the secretary of the Tuesday night meeting at one point. And no, I was.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, you want to lead? And she's like, yeah, I didn't expect that. I said, why not? She goes, well, I thought you were a skinhead or something like that. I said, I was a traditional skinhead. So I had to break it all down to her.
Yeah. So she got to learn what that was.
I said, yeah, I know some Nazis. Yeah, I'm not one of them. But I know, you know, I mean, I hear their message. Some of them have very pointed and well articulated things to say. Yeah. Not many, but some. And I don't like people tripping on my white people. It's just a stupid thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, but other people they feel that kind of way. I'm talking to AJ, and we just vetted out right there, and we've been tighter than 10 toes in a sock ever since.
Oh, she has a deep, immense amount of respect for you. She
Well,
always
because we've done the same shit.
Yeah.
She's got married twice.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've done it. We clean each other's wounds off in this program, and we just.
And that's
keep
what
it
I
moving.
always loved about that. Like that's what drew me in. Where I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
these are two different people.
Oh, me too. You know, I mean, so there I am with the gay guys again. The whole left side of the meeting I used to call the Castro district. You know, I'd be like, how's everything's over in the Castro district this week? And they'd be like, fuck you, and all this stuff, you know. And then I'm over there talking to them and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm speaking at one of their meetings. And I'm like, I don't understand you guys. Ugh, guys times to other, ugh, you know, it's not for me, but you know, you should see some of the girls I've been with, you know, like, you know, and they're like, yeah, what about those? You know, and so, you know, you find the avenue.
Yeah.
Because I got news for you. You know, we're nobody's getting out of here alive.
Right.
You know, and I don't know, you know, I would say at my core, you know, I'm more of a Christian than anything. I think of Jesus as like a guy from, you know, he lives in like, you know, I always like to say Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And he's got a Volkswagen van and he just drives down the coast and picks up degenerates like me and just provides a model. This is a model, you know, this is a model of how to treat people, and what it really does on the backside that people don't understand about being kind. Like in the 12 and 12 it says, courtesy, kindness, justice, and love are the keynotes by which we may come into harmony with practically anybody. Wow. Well, I don't want to hear that shit. I don't give a fucking shit about harmony. You know, not realizing that what that does for me. The thing is I'm more quiet.
Soundness of mind.
I'm
Peace,
sound of mind.
Yeah, yep.
I'm emotionally centered. You know, when I give you that chance to be wrong. Hey, everybody has the right to be wrong. Because if I don't let other people be wrong, I'm not going to let me be wrong. And I'm going to have a really shitty self-esteem. Give a guy a break. You know, not, you know, grievous stuff. Maybe not. But you gotta weigh things out. You gotta think things through. Because, you know, you might just write something off that, you know, that might be really great. And people, I'm really quick at I used to really be quick at that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're out. You're dead to me. And that's just how it was. Because I had to keep moving and find my people. You know,
Yeah.
and it was all here. It's a horrible place to be, I can tell you.
It's perfect. This is what I imagined if I had you on. It's everything I wanted to hear, and it's unfiltered, and it's the Randy that I know.
Well, you know,
the Randy that I love. You. I mean,
I hope so. I'm glad because, you know, I think everybody should be that. If I took anything from punk rock, it's be you, be original, be yourself. Don't listen. Don't get caught up in peer pressure. You know, stop and pause. Is this real? You know what I mean? You know, keep it real with yourself. Is this really who you are? Don't be somebody you're not supposed to be. If you're whatever you are, think you are. But, you know, be kind to yourself. You know, try to be kind to other people, but you don't always have to be. I go back and forth with people on politics all the time and all this stuff, you know? Yeah. That doesn't mean I have to not be friends with them anymore. But for the most part, that's how it ends up is all saying,
that's the direction it goes into.
You're dead to me and all this all kind of stuff or whatever the case would be. That's too bad for you. You know what I mean? You know, so because I like having relationships with people that have some challenge in them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, otherwise life is boring. You know what I mean? It's like I got 15 other Randys. Like that's how it was when I was drinking and using. Everybody around me was another Randy. You know what I mean? And it was just like let's go do that. And it's just no good. So.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks
this was awesome.
Yeah, right on, brother.
Well, that was a great episode. I have wanted to have Randy on here for quite some time. We go way back. I've known him my entire sobriety. I'm going to be 19 years sober come June and known him pretty much since day one. The man can appear to be rough around the edges and still irritate some people with the way that he speaks. He's a very outspoken, strong-minded individual that... what I've seen is a lot of growth in him in the last many years that I've known him. People have become more accepting of him, especially the ones that don't like him, and the ones that do, he doesn't care. Like I love the fact that he was one of the voices that I heard first when I was new in recovery, as well as I mentioned, AJ. You know, both of them being in the same room captured my attention, and so I knew there was something special going on here. And really what I can say about a guy like Randy and AJ, for that matter, are that these are people that are here to stay. They are very big proponents of the No Matter What Club, and that stood out to me. They said that drinking and using is not an option, and I knew right away that there's something special going on here. So what a great privilege it was to have him on here. And if you like this podcast, you can please, if you would be so kind as to subscribe to it, please share it, please write in the comment section, and until next week, we will have another great guest. Thank you. Keep coming back.